Hi, I'm Ty from Trew Audio, and I am here between two fins. No, I'm just kidding. I'm actually here with Paul, Director of Product Design from Sound Devices, and Gary, RF Application Engineer. I saw that you guys brought a lot of toys with you today. Can you run me through what are these?
What we've got here is a system built around our 8 series and CL16 controller for the 8 series. And what we've got here is a bunch of A20 Mini transmitters. These are our new digital wireless transmitters. And we also have a whole bunch of receivers here, which Gary's going to talk about in a minute. And then over here, we have our A10TX, a belt pack boom transmitter. Yeah, so that's what we've got going on here.
So a little bit more about the A10 receiver. There's 4 of these slot receivers mounted in this chassis. So it's a slot receiver, it's a modular platform. We're able to load it in a number of different ways. This is an A10 rack for us. So the A10 rack allows us to use 4 of the A10 receivers in it for 8 channels of audio. On the back of this, you've got an analog audio out on XLR, you've got AES audio out on XLR, you've also got a network connection for Dante audio output. So if you've got a Dante device, like we're feeding Dante into the 833 today. The other things you could do with an A10 slot receiver are you could put it in an SL2 chassis. We'll talk about that with a bag system a little bit later, but this has 2 slots and it can mount to the 8 series mixer recorders. Another thing you could do with a slot receiver is mount it in a camera. So we've got an example here of a Sony Camera that's got an A10 receiver slotted in right to the back of the camera. Another thing we have is this shoe. So this is the XLR shoe for the back. If you don't have it slotted into a rack, you can also use it individually. We've got 2 audio outputs from here. This is also analog or digital, AES digital out and a DC in. So that's really the different ways you can plug in an A10 receiver.
Yeah. And then on top here, we've got what we call a power station. This is basically an 8-slot system which can take up to 8 A20 Mini transmitters. They will charge all simultaneously. You can jam all these transmitters with timecode simultaneously, and you can transfer files. The other thing that we can do with the power station is attach it to a computer, and all of the transmitters will appear as a volume on your computer, so you can transfer files very quickly into the system.
Earlier you did mention that Sound Devices' wireless platform is constantly evolving. Could you tell me where you're at right now?
Yeah, sure. We're really excited about this new firmware version we released a few weeks ago, version 5.0, for the A10TX transmitter, the A20 Mini transmitter, and the A10 RX dual channel receiver. And what this does is introduce a new long-range modulation scheme. We call it LR modulation. And just at the expense of a very small little bit of added latency, still very low, we are significantly seeing an increase in range. And we at least as good as any other digital wireless system on the market, as good as the best digital systems on the market, but in some situations we've seen better performance than those. So we're quite confident that this is a really very competitive on the range.
So we've added in version 5 a Q meter, which is a link quality indicator. So Q for quality, right? You can see on the screen here there's 5 bars that it shows of the Q meter, and 5 tells you that your link quality is excellent. What that's indicating to you is what's the desired signal coming from your transmitter versus any low-level interfering signal. So if you have no interfering signal, great signal from your transmitter, you're going to see 5 bars of quality. If the link margin goes down, let's say you've got some low-level interference, maybe you see 4 bars of quality. When you get to 3, you know there's probably something that's there underneath your digital transmitter. And then 2 or 1, you're definitely getting some interference. You're going to want to think about rescanning, finding a clean frequency again.
The nice thing about that Q information is that if you're using a super slot interface such as the SL2 here, and that Q information can be rippled through from the receiver down through to the 8 series, and you can really see a nice display of your Q meter there. And you can even see the history of your Q link there. So that can be really informative if there's been historical dropouts.
That's a great point. There's integration between the slot receiver in the SL2 chassis into the 8 series mixer recorder, so you can see all sorts of things like signal strength history, Q meter history. You can change frequencies, like all the settings that you would normally change on your A10 receiver are accessible through the nice big menu on your 8 series mixer recorder. I think a lot of people are used to looking at the bars of RSSI, or signal strength indicator, right? So that's 5 bars means I've got full signal strength. But you can have 5 bars and have a lot of interference. So the Q meter really gives you some extra information about how much your desired signal is there versus how much your undesired signal might be underneath it. And so as you're using the digital systems, if you see 5 bars of quality, and in fact, even if your received signal strength might go down to 4 or 3 bars, if you're still at 5 bars of quality, you know, you've got excellent digital signal quality coming into your receiver.
Right.
That's very useful.
Yeah. I mean, it's worth saying that that Q information is also can be rippled through to the actual 8 series interface if you're using an SL2. So you can see all that information in large screen format on your 8 series, and you can even see a history of your Q-Link on the 8 series display. Now, one thing I did want to mention also is about our RF power settings on the transmitters. Like, for instance, on the A20 Mini, we have a 2 milliwatt low power mode, 10 milliwatt, a 20 milliwatt, and a 40 milliwatt setting. Now, obviously, the higher the power, the more the range. But what we found, anecdotally, and from feedback from our users, is that a 2 milliwatt setting on the long range modulation scheme is actually giving the same sort of range and sometimes more range than the 10 milliwatt setting on standard modulation, which is really cool because it means the lower the RF power, the more battery life you get.
Yes.
So an added bonus of the long range scheme.
Yeah, and you mentioned the integration if you have an SL2. Besides seeing your quality meter, you're really able to control any of the settings from the receiver right from your 8 series mixer recorder. So you get all those settings right on a nice big color display there, and it's a really great integration between the receiver and the mixer recorder.
Can you tell me more about the Sound Devices Wireless newest member, the A20 Mini?
Absolutely. So the A20 Mini transmitter is a transmitter that we introduced about a year ago now. It is the newest member of the family. So this is our small transmitter, really well suited to miking talent. It's very smooth, compact, works well in a belt, or you can build it into costumes very easily. Internally, you've got the lithium-ion rechargeable battery pack in it. In addition to the lithium-ion rechargeable battery pack, this also can take AAA batteries. So we're recommending lithium primary AAAs with this. So you've got a couple of different powering options there. With the rechargeable pack, there's the USB-C connector on the top. We talked about that before for use like file transfer. Also can be used to jam timecode, but it can charge the rechargeable pack in here. Also on the top here, you've got a LEMO connector, which is a 3-pin LEMO. Works with a wide variety of different lav mics. SMA connector for the antenna, and that's the A20 Mini.
Yeah, this button basically turns on and off the transmitter and can be used for pairing with our A20 remote app, which is our full control app for the A20 Mini transmitters. It runs on any tablet or phone, Android or iOS, and basically has a full comprehensive set of controls for configuring the transmitters. You can set up frequency, RF power, you can set the mode, whether it's record only or RF only, you can set the modulation, any parameter you like. Once you've paired the transmitters in the app, they basically become a permanent part of the inventory in the app, and you can choose which ones you want to use. The ones that you choose to use will appear in this long list here, and then you can either individually control them by selecting the transmitters and then turning transmitters on or off, setting parameters or what have you, or you can do group control, where you can configure groups of multiple transmitters and then apply settings simultaneously to them all. So it's a very flexible tool. One of the really useful features is the ability to turn on and off transmitters individually or in groups. Because if you can turn the transmitter off, you can save power. So imagine like you're going from one scene to another, there's some downtime. Turn your transmitters off. It's very easy to do from here. It's a very fast process, and when the transmitters are off, they're virtually drawing no current at all. In terms of group control, you have the ability to pretty much control RF mode, RF power. You can format the drives. There is a built-in 64 gig drive in these, which gives you over 8 hours of recording. So if you are in record-only mode, you can sort of record, stop and start your transmitters. So it's a very powerful app. It communicates via BLE. It's got really good range. Typically you'll see somewhere between 30 or 40 feet, maybe more, maybe a bit less, depending on how crowded the RF environment is. But it's a very, very powerful tool. It means you don't have to sort of disturb the talents and to make any settings to their transmitters.
Obviously you showed the power LED on there, so if you can turn this one on, you can see the power go to green. There's an LED next to the lav mic input. The LED next to lav mic input is going to show your mute status for that. And then the two LEDs on the top and the bottom are used for some of the special functions. For instance, if you'd press and hold the red power button for long enough, this will start flashing blue, letting you know you're in Bluetooth pairing mode. If you have them in the charger, you can see green LED indicates that this unit is fully charged. Amber LED indicates that this unit is charging. So we've even got
this ID function. So if you've got multiple transmitters and you want to know which unit you want to control, I hit that ID and you can see this particular transmitter here is flashing blue, letting me know that that is the transmitter I'm currently monitoring.
Yeah, the other thing is if you're in a situation where this might be under costume and if the fabric's rather thin, if the LEDs are causing you an issue, there's a function on there where you can actually turn the LEDs off. It's sort of a stealth mode, so we can eliminate all the LEDs if we need to.
Thank you, Gary. So yeah, that's the LED on and off function. We have the ability to select the modulation scheme that we're talking about before, the long range, which is currently set to here, or standard range just here. You can format the internal media, because as I mentioned before, these transmitters, all our transmitters have recording capability. With the A20 Mini, you actually have a built-in 64 gigabyte drive, which actually gives you over 80 hours of recording at 48, 32-bit float. So that's a useful feature, but you can format from here. Then you've got this mode button which actually sets whether the transmitter is in record or RF only mode. Record only or RF only mode. Now, internationally you can do both of those simultaneously.
Are there any special circumstances you want to choose one modulation, which is standard or LR over the other?
Yeah, that's a great question, and obviously the button for that is also in the app to select between long-range modulation or standard modulation. The standard modulation is what we've had ever since the A10 was released, and it's also compatible now with the A20. That's if you're in a situation where you need very low latency, maybe it's a live performance type of situation where the person who has maybe a headset mic on going into a body pack transmitter also is wearing in-ear monitors, and they want to keep that latency as low as possible. But in a lot of the location sound applications where we're seeing people use these types of products, the long range with 3.9 milliseconds of latency is no problem at all. And so I think we're going to see folks using long range primarily just because there's no other penalty than just a little bit of added latency.
And also battery safe.
Exactly.
Right, yeah, if you do turn down the power level because you've got plenty of range, now you can get a little bit longer battery life.
Now, in a recent update, we added a lot more what we call group functionality, where you can control multiple transmitters simultaneously. So it's very easy to configure a group. Basically, you can come to your menu and go to this group setup menu down here, and there's basically two different groups. There's an all transmitters group, so all the transmitters that you've enabled will appear in that group. If you hit the on control, they'll all turn on at once. If you turn them off, they'll all turn off at once. If you make any setting, changing settings like changing the modulation or mute or various functions, they will all happen simultaneously, and the command happens very quickly. It's within a second typically.
Wow.
So it makes for much easier control and setup rather than having to go through each transmitter individually, right? So very simple to set up a group. Like I said, you have a default all transmitters group. But you can also create your own custom group with its own name. I've called this one particularly Pools Group, and I've selected which transmitters from my enabled transmitters I want in that group. In this case, I've got 5 of them. So now I've set that up, I can come back to my main page here and scroll to the top of my list. Now you can see these 2 group tabs here, rows here. I can select the All Transmitters group, or I can select the Pools group here. So in this case, I'm going to turn all of those off, And you can see very quickly, within 1 second, they all turn off. The next scene is about to start. Okay, let's enable the whole thing. And now they're all back on. Simple as that. And I've not got just control over the on and off. I've also got control over these other features here, like RF power, LEDs on or off, the modulation scheme, mute status, formatting, and also the mode. So a really flexible tool there.
Within the pack, we've got a multi-stage analog to digital converter, and that multi-stage conversion has 130 dB of dynamic range. And your typical lav mic maybe has 110 dB of dynamic range, possibly less. So what that means is really we're able to capture the entirety of the audio coming in from the lav mic. It's impossible to clip it, and we have a lower noise floor on the mic pre into here than we do on the lav mic. So capture the full signal, send it across the digital link, get it to the receiver, adjust the level here or adjust it on your 8 series, and you're good to go.
How many different frequency block does this unit comes in?
Oh, that's a great question. So there's only one A20 Mini. This A20 Mini transmitter in the United States can tune from 470 all the way up to 608 megahertz. That's the entirety of the UHF TV band in the United States, and that's really where most people use their wireless mics in the US. The hardware itself is actually capable of 470 up to 694 megahertz. So some countries still allow you to use the 600 megahertz band. So how does that work? Well, with the app actually will set the country based on the location services on your phone or your tablet. So if you were to take this unit and travel to the UK, when you turn it on in the UK, you can check in the settings and make sure that, oh, hey, the phone knows that I'm in the United Kingdom now, and it unlocks the legal transmit frequencies in that country. So this is also great for anybody that's got a large inventory of wireless products. You only need the one transmitter, and it can work really anywhere in the world.
Wow, that is very powerful.
It is.
Can you tell me how can I get sound devices wireless into a Sony camera?
Absolutely. So we've got a Sony FX9 camera set up here, and we've got an accessory on the back that allows for a slot wireless receiver. Something that's unique with the Sound Devices A10 receiver is we've got an adapter that goes into a 15-pin for a Sony camera, so you can slot in and you can get 2 channels of digital audio from the A10 receiver into the Sony camera. And with that adapter, you can actually get 2 channels of digital audio into the Sony camera. And really, outside of Sony's receivers, this is the only receiver that can do it. So it's a great application for an A10 receiver in the slot. You can see here we've got the display flipped upside down, so it's easy for the camera operator to see what's going on with the wireless. We've got 2 microphones set up. One of the microphones that we have set up here is going to be a boom microphone. So we've got our A10 transmitter. We've got an adapter cable here to XLR. This is providing 48 volt phantom power right into the boom mic. So you've got your wireless boom. That's channel 1. Channel 2 is going to be my lav mic going right into the camera. So for any sort of run and gun ENG applications, this is a really great application for the A10 system.
Can you tell me how you can integrate the sound devices wireless in the back setup?
Absolutely. The SL2 is the best solution for that. This is an optional accessory which is compatible with the entire 8 series, the 833, the 888 as we're showing here, and the Scorpio. And this basically provides RF distribution, power distribution, and control and digital audio connectivity between the SL2 and the slot-in digital receivers, the A10 RXs and the 8 series. What it does is totally neaten up the bag. No cables necessary, no external cables. It's all handled through the expansion port. It fits rigidly to the top of the unit via a couple of screws, but it's really nicely integrated. So in this current setup we have here, we've got 4 channels of audio, 2 from each of the slot A10 RXs, and we can actually connect up to 8 channels of audio of receiver to this we can connect 2 external receivers, digital receivers, via the 2 rear AES ports. And we've also on the rear got 2 DC outputs for powering peripherals such as IFB. Now the antenna distribution is really neatens up the bag, but we've also got 2 loop outs on the side here which can be used to feed the antenna signals to the external receivers. Now, in terms of control, we have a really nice interface for setting up the receivers. From this interface down here, you can set the frequency of the receivers. You can see transmitter status such as battery level and mute and limited status. And you can also configure which slots are enabled and not enabled. So for instance, you might be just using 2 channels one day, so why have the other slot powered up? So you can disable and enable slots individually. The interface is really nice. It's a nice large screen on the 8 series which displays all the receiver parameters. And what's really nice is the ability to display the Q meter or the RSS meter, not just the value at a specific moment in time, but also the history, the RF history of those values. So that can be very informative of if you've experienced a dropout, or you can see if there's a sudden loss in signal or quality of signal. You can see that from the 8 series interface. So yeah, a very, very neat setup, which lightens the bag, gets rid of all these cables and the intermittent problems you can sometimes suffer with cables. And yeah, makes it a pleasure to run over the shoulder.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode with Paul and Gary from Sound Devices. Please come back next time for more exciting contents.
Thanks, Ty.
Thanks.